Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser. Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Microcredit is the extension of very small loans to poor entrepreneurs who are not considered bankable. These individuals lack the collateral, steady employment, and verifiable credit history that is normally required to gain access to traditional lines of credit. The microloan concept was a financial innovation. It was originated in Bangladesh to enable extremely impoverished people to engage in self-employment projects that allow them to generate income, build wealth, and exit poverty. Here in St. Louis, the Justine PETERSEN Housing and Reinvestment Corporation is helping local, low to moderate income families and individuals build assets and create enduring change in their lives. We're going to ask my guest today what success he's had in helping people change their lives. Galen Gondolfi, welcome to Conversation.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lee.
So let's just ask that question. What success have we had in changing people's lives with the Justine PETERSEN Corporation?
Significant success. I first want to mention that Justine PETERSEN essentially has two faces. One side of us is housing. We're a HUD-certified counseling agency. So we assist first-time homeowners, people looking to refi their first home, or even purchase their second home. We focus a lot on, one, repairing their credit, building their credit, raising their credit score. The other side, which we're mostly going to focus on today, is the whole idea of micro-lending, micro-enterprise. PETERSEN is a micro-lender intermediary for the Small Business Administration, the SBA. So essentially, federal dollars from Washington are lent to PETERSEN, and we in turn lend that money to small businesses in the metro area. We service Metro St. Louis, including two counties here on the Illinois side, Madison and St. Clair. In terms of successes, I would like to say that I could count multiple times on both hands success stories for both startup businesses, existing businesses, and businesses that have actually, fluctuated over time. I found your introduction interesting because there was a good amount of information about businesses that are essentially starting from nothing. That is, cottage industries transitioning from one's home, using that skill set to apply to a larger business idea. Even though those are countless examples we've worked with at PETERSEN Housing, there's also several examples of existing businesses that have been aided or assisted by a small business loan. And we'll probably talk a little bit today how over the course of time there's been an absence of a community-based lending agency or organization, and in many ways microloans fill that gap.
Now, why would a existing business that is not failing would have difficulty in getting a lender to provide them the necessary capital to continue, buying raw materials?
Sure, by all means. Let me take a convenience store for an example on the north side of St. Louis, and I found this example incredibly striking. They essentially, mom and pop operation, the couple opened their convenience store, I believe, in 1972. At that time, it appeared they had a pretty good working relationship with what I would call a community-based lender. That is a banker they would know by name, perhaps a branch manager down on the next corner block. The Bailey building and loan, if you will, existed not only in small towns but in urban neighborhoods. And with a lot of large-scale bank mergers, we see an absence of that, what I would call relationship lending. And PETERSEN does a lot of relationship lending.
Well, that's an important point. People don't realize that we have lost the ability of someone to walk in off the street and talk to somebody, talk to them straight and say, I'm not credit worthy, but I'm a good guy and I'm willing to work hard, and if you trust me, I'll make something of this loan. Most banks that you would walk into, there's a computer screen.
By all means.
And that computer screen tells them, okay, here's your score, and
certainly.
You don't come up to our level.
Lee, I appreciate you bringing that up. We essentially pride ourselves on being one-on-one based. That is, I cast a net wide. I'll sit down and talk with anyone. It's not the case necessarily with a loan officer at an actual bank. In addition, if you call me, I'll talk to you regardless of what your idea is, be it unrealistic or incredibly lucrative. The whole idea here is actually, I throw around the phrase fiscal esteem. Building's one fiscal esteem. So, hey, if that person brought in their business plan and it's on a napkin, we have a lot of work to do, but there is a starting point. And the important thing here is that Justine PETERSEN is at least an ear to those people wishing to make a difference in their life from a financial perspective.
Mm-hmm. What kind of businesses have you dealt with and have successfully gone from launch to some success?
Sure. Our three largest sectors, so to speak, of businesses include daycares, in-home daycares, as well as daycare facilities, cleaning businesses. So many people start a small cleaning operation, later expand, hire on a whole battalion of helpers, so to speak. And we do a lot of salons. I'll mention that single women entrepreneurs, probably make up about 60% of our small business loans. Related is the fact that we've helped many buy their first home. Again, I want to say the lion's share of our first-time homeowners have been single, female-headed households. After gaining the confidence of home ownership, they've transitioned into the whole idea of becoming their own boss. And in-home daycare is the first step to success. Many look at the fact that they're taking on a few children, maybe relatives or a few in the neighborhood, and think, well, gee, I could legitimize this and go the next step. It costs a little bit of money. You need to have several inspections done. You need a privacy fence. You need to make sure your kitchen passes inspection and such. But it allows one to transition into a more lucrative endeavor, become an autonomous, independent entrepreneur. We've seen women, and couples for that matter, it hasn't exclusively been women opening daycares, but transition outside their house to open up a facility, one as large as I think having 120 children. Of course, that took numerous years for her to build.
That sounds like a school, not a
It does,
not
a small academy. Salons are another good example. I've visited people doing hair in their basement, their kitchen, and their garage. And many are looking to take the next step to actually open a salon. What's really amazing about the whole salon business, and I've learned a lot over the years working with it, is that renting a storefront is actually not so much of a major undertaking because one can supplement their income by renting chairs. They call it station rental. Mm-hmm. So any given week, they can have 4 or 5 other people in there doing hair, doing other sorts of hair care or beauty services, and charging anywhere from on the low end $150 to on the high end $450 a week.
Now I understand what you mean by renting chairs. In other words, they have a space. Some outsider comes in and brings guests or brings
their own clientele.
Brings clients in and
it's
cuts
amazing.
there.
It really is. A lot of this, is going on, like I said, in people's kitchens, basements, or garages for that matter. And micro play a large role in transitioning one, I would say, a cottage industry to an actual business that's independent, perhaps with a storefront.
So what dollar values are we talking about? When you say micro, what does micro mean in dollar terms?
By all means. People are always baffled that a small business loan from an actual bank can be over $1 million. It can be. And a microloan is essentially that, very, very small. Our low end is probably $500. We cap out at $35,000. Our average loan size is under $10,000. Last year it was $7,000. Mm-hmm. We've been doing a lot in terms of ramping up volume. Did over 200 loans last year. And our first year, which was about 6 years ago, we did a mere 50. We're targeted to do over 300 this year. We're looking at 500 in the next probably 24 months or so. The Aspen Institute, which is a think tank out east, is actually studying Justine PETERSEN along with 7 other organizations nationwide, looking at the scaling up success of microloans.
Do you count it as success when somebody moves up from your lending to a regular bank?
By all means, it actually is the ultimate goal, and it's all credit score based. For us to offer you a loan, you need to be unbankable from a conventional lender's perspective. That might mean blemish credit, or it might mean just a debt-to-income ratio. There are some people who actually pay their bills on time, but the fact that they have a significant debt load still puts them in a situation where they can't get a true small business loan from a lender. The goal essentially, yes, is to graduate from our situation, to actually be able to get a small business loan from a lender that would allow a much more generous amortization. And then let me talk a little bit about that. We're very concerned about monthly payments. The whole idea of how much you borrow needs to be paid back, and it needs to be paid back monthly. We cap out at 72 months, which means the more you borrow, the more you have to pay each month. So a lot of our work on the underwriting committee meeting is essentially looking at a loan proposal and say, hey, we take out the carving knife and what can we want? We call it essential lending. Do you need $5,000 or do you really need $3,500 and the remainder can wait? A step-up loan, is something else I think that comes, it's very strategic in essentially small business lending. Borrow as little as you need to get up and running. Pay us on time, 6, 12 months, and we'll take you up to the next notch. We've had people borrow $1,500, come back 6 months later for $5,000. We've had people borrow $5,000 from day one, come back 6 months or 10 months later for $10,000 or $15,000.
Mm-hmm. And these people who are moving up, do they bring their friends with them? Do they teach them how to also become their own bosses?
You know, what is actually incredibly, for me, worthy of the whole experience and the fact that it's you actually do see this process at work. In terms of word of when something has actually happened that one thought wouldn't happen, I guess it's likened to a miracle from their perspective. And sure, family members and friends have been, our marketing essentially has been a word of mouth endeavor. Mm-hmm. Demand is seemingly unabated. We never have enough money to actually lend for those that are in need.
Everybody wants to borrow.
By all means. But the learning process is very significant. The whole idea that they find out that a credit score is essentially how you're judged in the financial world. And the only way out is to raise your credit. So yes, the amazing thing, there have been instances where not just family members, but we've had 3 or 4 people from the same block of a neighborhood come to us because you're out on the porch, you're talking about your situation. One says, hey, this is, they helped me, this is a place to go, and it spreads from that point on.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been doing this with Justine PETERSEN?
This spring I'll be with Peterson for 6 years.
Yeah, and before that?
Prior to that, I was in Boston working for a development umbrella organization for the state of Massachusetts. My graduate school is in urban and regional planning with a focus on housing issues and small business development. So it's been a pretty good match. It's been a really busy time in St. Louis, but a really exciting time. There's a lot of opportunity. St. Louis economically is still in a position where one can essentially be an incredibly small business owner or have an idea and make it a reality.
And you said in St. Louis, like it's different other places. Why don't you just
Sure,
elaborate on that?
Well, coming actually from a Boston perspective, out there working with small business people, the cards are stacked against you. Everything's just more expensive. So the storefront that someone could possibly rent here in St. Louis, and depending on where you are in the city, let's say it's going to be $500, $1,500, or $350. That could be the range in the city of St. Louis. I think we're looking at definitely anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for the smallest storefront in the Metro Boston area, if not more. So we have fixed costs that are going to be much more expensive. Labor's more expensive, transportation. It's just a much more complicated scenario. Chicago as well is more expensive, for a Midwest example.
And therefore, are those organizations in Chicago and Boston loaning more, or they still are, as in the loan areas that you're in, or
sure enough, average loan size tends to be a bit higher in higher markets. There is a national organization called Axion, which actually does the bulk of microlending in Chicago. Peterson actually is one of the largest microlenders in the nation, but from a perspective of true loan volume, Axion in Chicago tends to do the most, and their loan size is a bit higher than ours. On the same token, they do a good amount of very small loans as we do. This might be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about payday loans and how microloans can be an alternative to a payday loan for a small business person. Mm-hmm. A payday loan is essentially this bridge loan, this loan that can get you till when you actually receive your paycheck or you put your car title up. They're ubiquitous here in St. Louis as in every other urban context. They're on most street corners. Petersen Housing had one at down the block from our former office, and we just moved offices to North Grand about 3 months ago. And I always told people, drive past the payday loan and come to us. And essentially, that whole idea of making the right decision and passing the payday loan, I can use the same pitch for our new location. We're a stone's throw from yet another payday loan center. And that just speaks to the absence of affordable capital in many urban neighborhoods, especially impoverished neighborhoods. The Community Reinvestment Act, CRA legislation, never went to the extent of requiring actual lending institutions. There's been requirements for loan products made available by banks and such. But the whole idea of a community-based lending institution, it's quite pathetic to think it would be the payday loan center, but in many cases it has been. And the exciting thing with many of the clients I work with is the whole idea of transitioning them from an informal economy to mainstream financing. One would be surprised how many small business people are still operating just trading post mentality, I would say. A cigar box full of receipts is still common in some of these businesses as a form of accounting. And I'll mention that we had a program that involved a laptop and accounting software, QuickBooks, that revolutionized some of the bookkeeping for these small business clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I want to talk a little bit about what it takes mentally for people to go from poverty and decide that they don't want to be there anymore and they're willing to do what's necessary. Do the people who come to you, have they already made that mental transition? Or is your counseling work what actually helps them to see that, yes, I can actually run a business. I can eventually earn my own keep and maybe begin to hire others to bring them out as well?
I would say that both situations are true. And what I really want to stress here is the whole idea of it being process-driven and incremental. There are instances that someone will come to us and say, hey, look, I know what I need to do, and can you help me get there? They've had the epiphany, so to speak. They have somewhat of the roadmap. We'll guide them. But there are others, certainly, that it's a long, drawn-out process. Improving one's credit score, and again, I put a lot of emphasis on credit score because that's what it really comes down to. Getting a loan, buying a car, buying a house, getting a small business